Hello, and welcome to another short box from Warhammer 40k's Grim History from the Beyond. I'm Zeckthar, and this week we'll be talking about the Black Crusade, or as the Traitor Legions call them, the Long War.
Now last week we covered the Forgotten Crusades, and these next two are just as small, yet we'll be getting a little more understanding of Abaddon's true character. Now before we start on these two crusades, we have already learned a few things about the Warmaster in our last boxes. While Abbadon is violent by nature and has no concept of morality, he does have a twisted sense of honor. He won't bat an eye when it comes to the death and destruction of entire worlds. Yet, if you fight well against him like Sigismund did, more than likely he will treat your death with respect. Now mind you, he'll still kill you. But you at least will be honored in death, instead of becoming some horrific ritual to gain power from the gods. We have also learned that Abbadon is patient. Remember, he is playing the long game, hence the name The Long War. Time to him is almost irrelevant, and he has the patience to simply wait and bide his time until the moment to strike is imminent. But the most important thing we have learned is Abbadon's a fan of subterfuge. His tactics are rarely straightforward, and even as his enemies are claiming their hollow victory, he has accomplished his goals and disappeared back into the eye. It seems time and time again the Despoiler uses the Empire's own arrogance to gain an advantage, like the first crusade we are going to talk about, the Fifth Crusade. In 723.M36, Abbadon launched his next campaign, which is also remembered as
The Tide of Blood, The Scouring of Elysia,
and the
Black Crusade of Doombreed.
Abaddon's forces scoured the Elysia sector, raiding hundreds of worlds and causing untold death and destruction. The Fifth Black Crusade included among its many atrocities the scouring of the Elysia sector of the Segmentum Obscurus, culminating in the destruction of the ancient imperial city of Khazur-Lutin on the world of Taranth. Abbadon purposely launched chaos invasions on a dozen worlds within the sector, entrusting the destruction of the imperial cities, shrines, and temples to his warlords, while using his Black Fleet to keep the Imperial Navy's battle fleet Obscurus engaged in deep void skirmishes. Yet again, Abbadon uses subterfuge, his purpose not to get stuck in a major conflict, but by a sector-wide conflicts he provokes a massive response from the Imperium and drew in chapters of the Adeptus Astartes. His plan set in motion, Abbadon led the bulk of his Black Legion to the city of Khazur-Lutin, burning the great city to the ground and enslaving its people. When the Warhawks and Venerators Space Marines arrived on Taranth, in chapter size strength, they made an immediate assault upon Khazur-Lutin. As Thunderhawk screamed into orbit, a tight smile crossed the Warmaster's face. Things were going just as planned. Lifting his sword into the air as a signal, Abaddon's followers committed a mass sacrifice of 10 million Imperial citizens. Their blood funneled through the city's great canals into a vast lake of gore. Above the lake, a rift into the warp cracked open, and the demon prince, Doombreed, stepped into reality, howling in triumph. Abbadon, you see, had made a dark pact with Doombreed, promising it the skulls of an entire chapter of Space Marines in return for his service. With thousands of bloodletters pouring forth from the Lake of Blood, Doombreed waded into the ranks of the Warhawks and Venerators. The Black Legion then sprang their own trap, and from prepared positions across the city, they opened fire on the Loyalists, blocking their retreat. Although they fought without fear or respite, both chapters fell that day, their warriors mutilated by the demonic host, and their gene seeds forever lost to the Imperium. The skulls of the fallen Space Marines were taken by Doombreed to be mounted upon the mighty throne of the Blood God. Now, I haven't really discussed this much yet, but since the Great Crusade led by the Emperor himself, the Space Marines have kind of been on a slow decline. Some of this has to do with the loss of their Primarchs, yet the simple fact is they don't last very long because even as awesome as they are, the untold billions of enemies keep their ranks pretty thin. So much so, in fact, that most humans will go their entire life without seeing an Astartes. And those that do normally don't live long enough to speak of it, mainly because of the simple fact that if they do show up, things are not going well in whatever conflict you're in. I say all this to display that it was a terrible blow for the Imperium to lose 2,000 Space Marines in a single confrontation. Now, while the Imperial forces battled against Abaddon's assault, a flawless host warband led by squads of possessed Chaos Space Marines tormented the Agri worlds of Galvan II and Galvan IV. Not only did they smash their way through the Imperial defenses and placements, which were woefully undermanned as Abaddon's forces kept reinforcements from reaching the beleaguered worlds, but they went on to horrifically massacre the populations of several cities, to possess raided Imperial temples, sacred shrines, seizing powerful artifacts of the Imperial creed that Abbadon had requested of them. Not satisfied with all that they had taken, flawless hosts destroyed both worlds, orbital shipyards, and major manufactorias before leaving orbit with their prizes, delivering a critical blow to the Imperium during a dark hour. In truth, while the Chaos victories were savored in their own right by the Warmaster of Chaos and his dark servants, their purpose had also been to loosen the psychic equilibrium in the Elysia sector. Each act of violation and violent horror shattered a divide between the warp and the real space that prevented and increased to psychic mutations in that part of the galaxy. In truth, the Fifth Black Crusade, like all the Black Crusades before the 13th, was intended to further weaken the barriers between the mortal realm and the warp, in the hopes of eventually giving birth to the Great Rift and the final destruction of the Imperium's domain. Now, yet again, while this seems like a simple conflict, which the Imperium claimed victory because Abaddon did retreat back into the Eye, it was a hollow victory that garnered no happiness. This is probably the most quintessential crusade in Abaddon's long list of raids and battles. It shows a ruthless, patient, and tactically flexible general that gains victory no matter what is set against him. Now, the last thing we'll learn in this Vox about Abaddon is he expects utmost loyalty from his followers, and you can either get on board with his plan and follow him, or die. In 901.M36, Abaddon launched his 6th Black Crusade. But before I explain what happened in 901, we have to go back a ways for some context. You see, when Abaddon ascended to command of the Sons of Horus, not every warrior of the 16th Legion swore allegiance to him. Many of the traitors clung to their worship of Horus as a god, believing that he would one day return to lead them and punish those who had forsaken their oaths. Others considered the Horus heresy to be the end of subservience to gods and masters. The Emperor and their primarchs were the last overlords they would ever bow down to, and they saw no reason to make an exception for Abaddon. Most of these renegades were gradually lost to the warp, disappearing into the Eye and vanishing from record, though some prospered and would return to be a thorn in the side of Abaddon. One of these splintered warbands was
the Sons of the Eye,
led by the Chaos Lord Drakarth the Sightless. Drakarth, also known as the Blind Butcher of Herodias VII, formed the Sons of the Eye out of those Sons of Horus who refused Abaddon's oath. A former battle brother of Abaddon's, Drakarth had been one of Horus's captains, escaping in the chaos after Maulium fell. Drakarth and his warband fled deeper into the Eye, only to return time and again to launch raids against multiple demon worlds, as well as other renegade warbands. They initiated the Battle of Keening Deep in 892.M32, where the Sons of the Eye defeated the Chaos Lord Voslok and his World Eaters warband, claiming their fortress and hurling their foes' skulls into the world's soulfires. Drakarth personally ripped Voslok's demon axe from his grip during the battle, turning the treacherous weapon upon his former master. Abaddon had heard whispers of Drakarth's escape and treachery from the demon prince Be'lakor, and his own cabal of chaos sorcerers, who also claimed that an old ally would one day rise to subvert the Black Legion, twisting its loyalty with the memory of its dead Primarch Horus. So under the guise of a truce, Abaddon made a pact with the Sons of the Eye, and allied with them during the 6th Black Crusade in 901.M36. Abaddon wanted to make an example out of the Sons of the Eye, one that would serve as a dire warning to any that would consider challenging his power. But he needed to set the stage for his vengeance, so that none would ever doubt his resolve. Now, during the campaign of the 6th Black Crusade, Abaddon besieged the Imperial Forge world of Arcreach, offering Drakarth and his Sons of the Eye an equal share of the plunder. For solar months, the two forces of Chaos Space Marines fought side by side against the defenses of the Adeptus Mechanicus, bombarding their great forge cities from space. Finally, the traitors stood triumphant in the smoldering ruins of the great Manufactoria, Mechanicus dead littering the ground. As Abaddon surveyed his Black Legion howling in triumph, he smiled. As he watched the Sons of the Eye bellow in victory as well, his true purpose was soon to be at hand. He watched as the ranks of the Sons of the Eye dispersed and cracked his neck side to side as he watched his true enemy march toward him. Jakarth the Sightless stomped towards the Warmaster, a deep scowl on his face, which held until he reached Abbadon. When he reached the Warmaster, he flatly stated,
"How are we going to divvy up the plunder, Abaddon?"
"Not quite close enough," the Warmaster thought. Stepping towards the warlord, Abbadon raised his voice for all to hear, saying as he extended his hand in friendship,
"Well met, Jakarth. Your warriors truly are some of the greatest in the warp."
Abbadon detected a slight grimace from Jakarth as the warlord took his offered hand. They had known each other since the Ulunor campaign, before their father's betrayal, and he hadn't changed much. Our respect was amicable between the two. There was no camaraderie, no friendship. As Abbadon grasped the arm of the warlord in a shake, he tightened his grip so his prey couldn't get away. Leaning in, he almost said in a whisper,
"So much so, I think I will keep them."
Before Jakarth could comprehend what he meant, Abaddon's free hand impaled the warlord through the gut with the talons of Horus. How his eyes widened with shock as blood poured from his mouth. Abbadon couldn't help himself. He chuckled with delight. Lifting the warlord with one arm, he bellowed to the Sons of the Eye,
"Your leader was weak. Bow before me as your new master, or die where you stand."
Not a single son stood their ground. They all bent the knee. Jakarth lived just long enough to see the Sons of the Eye bow to Abbadon and be reabsorbed into the Black Legion before the new Warmaster of Chaos tore out his skull and spine. Thus did Abbadon deliver a dire warning to any who dare challenge his power. Now, you're probably wondering like I was, how did Jakarth the Sightless watch his men bow to Abbadon? Well, this didn't make any sense to me either. And through many hours of research, I honestly really don't have an answer for you. At first I figured it was some strange title, like he wasn't a very good tactician or something. But then I found his other title, the Blind Butcher of Herodias 7. This leads me to believe he was, in fact, blind. I mean, perhaps he saw through the warp, or had 2 bionic eyes or something, but honestly, I don't know what to tell you, and if you know, please leave your answers in the comments. I'd really appreciate it, actually. Because honestly, it doesn't make any sense. He's like, "Watch!" to a blind man. Regardless, this act of betrayal may come as a bit of a shock. It seems that betraying your allies is not part of his honor code. Like I said at the beginning, he has a twisted sense of honor. This crusade is also the only crusade I can find that the main purpose of the crusade was not to damage the Imperium. While he did destroy an Imperial Forge world, it was, yet again, another ruse to accomplish his true goal, to send a message across the warp that dissension would not be tolerated. Now, as forceful a message as this was, some did not give it much thought. Mainly those who had descended to demonhood already. You know, the fallen Primarchs in particular, as well as the greater demons of the warp. Now, while I said they didn't give it much thought, I think they did begrudgingly accept that Abaddon the Despoiler was now a piece on the board, and also now had a seat at the corrupt table. Well, folks, that's all the time I have for today. Please tune in next week as we discuss the 7th and 8th Crusades, where Abaddon begins to gather more power, and we will meet one of the more peculiar Loyalist Space Marine chapters in the Imperium of Man. Now, real quick before I go, I wanted to let you folks know that on Sunday the 10th, at 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, Yuksen and I, along with a special guest host, will be doing a live event on our YouTube channel,
Tales of Asharacka.
Please join us in the chat and join the conversation. Anyways, if you enjoyed this Vox, please like, follow, subscribe, and comment. And if you really enjoyed this Vox, feel free to join our membership program on YouTube. Well, that's all the time we have for today, and as always,
Until next time, this is Zeckthar, signing off.